Greetings everybody, welcome back to Coder's Journey, episode number 9 of our Clean Architecture course. In this episode, I'm going to model the salary value object. So over the past couple of videos, we've been talking about making our domain model richer by introducing meaningful types instead of using generic primitive types like string or decimal for a salary. Here, we're going to continue talking about this. We're going to implement a new value object called salary, and then we're going to, update our employee entity to use this new type rather than a primitive decimal type for the, property, for the salary property. This salary value object is a little bit more involved than the text, phone number, or email address. And of course, we're going to refine those as well. But for the salary, not only we want to store an amount, right? Like for example, a monetary amount, but also we want to be able to store a currency code. So for the currency code, you can go with a small little convenient string inside of your value object, your salary value object. But again, I've decided to encapsulate the currency code as a separate value object as well. I'm going to show you what I've done. So let's continue with our notes. So far we've transformed text, email address, phone number into strong value objects. Now let's tackle the salary, a critical piece of the employee domain that often suffers from primitive obsession. I've seen this many times. People go with decimal for salaries. I've done it myself. I've done it in my training videos. I've done it in projects that I have developed, but implementing a value object for something that is responsible for storing some monetary value, something like, for example, price, salary, makes more sense. And I'm going to show you how to do this. Why a salary value object? So using a decimal alone for salary is not enough. It doesn't enforce positivity. You can store a negative value. Doesn't capture currency. We want to store the currency code. Doesn't prevent logic errors like negative salaries. Doesn't communicate meaningful intent, meaning clearly. So instead, we're going to model our salary with the following goals: represent both amount and currency, right? So these two pieces of information, we need these two for a piece of salary for an employee. Enforce non-negative amount. Of course, this is a business rule to enforce. Validate against an upper bound. This is again another business rule. We don't want our salary to be more than a specific amount. So we're going to continue with this value object. I'm going to take you to Visual Studio. I'm going to show you what I've done here. So for salary, again, I've decided to implement this record. I've got this decimal type called amount. I've got another type, another value object called currency code. Here, I'm going to show you this in a minute. And then I've got a property here of type currency code. And then inside of the constructor, what I have done is that I have, I am receiving the decimal amount as well as a currency code in a string. And of course, I am checking my guard clauses, as you can see here. And then I am using the currency code value object to convert the string to a currency code. The currency code is gonna be stored inside of this property. And of course, I've got this toString method. And for the toString method right now, what is happening is that I am putting this hard-coded $sign here, but that is not the way it should be. I just noticed this now. So I need to, based on the currency code, I need to put the currency code here. So it takes more, it needs to be refined, right, further. So this is what I've got, the salary. As you might have noticed, the value objects that we have been introducing over the past few episodes are kind of wrappers, right, over like primitive types. So for text, we had a wrapper around a string type. The same with email address and phone number, and our salary value object is a wrapper around a decimal value. So it adds a layer of meaning, right, if you will, around a primitive type decimal. It adds more meaning, more validation, more logic. It makes it more suitable for our domain model. I'm going to show you the currency code as well. So the currency code is not that difficult. I mean, my intention was to be able to store as many currency codes as I want, assuming that my employees could receive their salaries in different, currencies like USD, CAD, euros, and so on. So what I've done, again, I've got this record type called currency code. It's a wrapper around a string. I've got this hash set to be able to support more than one currency code. I've got my toString method. I've got my, from a string method, which is a static method, which is responsible for taking in like a string and then returning a currency code type. I've got this static, IEnumerable that the user can use in order to see what currency codes are supported. And I've got, of course, this constructor that is responsible for doing some guard clause checking, and then it's going to, convert the value which is being passed into the constructor. It's going to convert it to uppercase, and then it's going to, kind of check the value against the supported currency codes. And if the value is not inside of the supported currency codes, of course, we're going to, throw an exception, saying that we only right now support USD CAD, and of course, if you want, you can add more currency codes to this hash set as well. And finally, we're going to set the value, not that value, right? We're going to set this value to the property that we've got here. So this is a currency code value object, and of course, as I showed you, I've got this property inside of the salary type, and of course the salary type is used inside of the employee. So right now, instead of having a decimal type for the salary, I've got this meaningful type, and then of course I've got my constructor as well. The salary has been converted to a salary type. So the notes also have the same thing. I'm just going to go through the notes. So one good thing with the salary type, for example, is that you can specify the precision, right? It is immutable, as I have told you before. They're value objects. They are validated. They prevent the user from doing like invalid operations on them, like for example mixing currencies. And of course, it has some explicit formatting for consistent display of the values. And then we've got our currency code. As I showed you, we're gonna right now support only USD and CAD, but again, there's nothing stopping you from adding more currency codes to this hash set if you want. And of course, one other thing that you might consider doing is to create a specific, exception type for this scenario. So instead of throwing a generic argument exception, you can create, if it makes sense for your domain, you can create a more specific exception type and return it and throw it. So finally, we're going to update the employee type. As I showed you, we're going to replace the decimal with a salary value object, which makes of course more sense. And then again, inside of the constructor, we're going to receive this, and then we're going to set it to this property that we've got. So again, as I showed you before, as I told you in the previous episodes, gradually, one step at a time, little by little, we are refining the domain model. We started as small. Nothing was perfect. Nothing is perfect right now. But gradually, we are adding more value objects. We are enriching the domain model. We are refining it. I really want you to take this approach. Don't assume that at first your domain model needs to be perfect. No. It is like anything else in software development. It is iterative. You take it one step at a time and you refine it. You add more layers, you add more, meaning. And in this episode, we did exactly that. We introduced a dedicated currency code type. Salary is now composed of two validated value objects, which can help us take the amount as well as the currency code. The currency code is a separate value object itself. We improved type safety, clarity, domain modeling, accuracy, and so on. Currency validation is now centralized and reusable inside of the currency code value object that we've got in our domain model. So I'm going to wrap up this video. I hope you've enjoyed watching it. If that's the case, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment if you've got anything to say. I would really love to get in touch with you. If you've got any ideas about the content of the video, please leave a comment. And again, as I have told you before, you can find the link to the solution files in the show description, in the description of this video. And yeah, stay tuned. We're going to continue talking about our domain model in the next episode.